Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us is Kellyanne Smith, personal finance expert and reporter at Forbes Advisor, a trusted destination for unbiased personal finance advice, news, and reviews to discuss everyday items that are more expensive due to inflation and how the war in Ukraine could impact your grocery bill. Kellyanne, it's great to see you again. Welcome back to Trade Talks.
Thank you for having me.
What items are you seeing that have been noticeably impacted by inflation?
Well, it's really just items across the board, things that are everyday purchases for consumers at the grocery store. So meat, poultry, fish, eggs, but then also things that are still considered essentials like bedding, furniture, some apparel. So really right now we're just seeing an increase in prices in a wide variety of things that consumers regularly purchase.
When do you think inflation will go down? We know global central banks are doing a number of strategy shifts to try and tame it. But, we saw the inflation data this morning, and it looks like there's some work ahead.
Yeah, so people were really hopeful that by the end of this year, inflation would start to rein in. But this awful war in Ukraine right now is really compounding the issue. There have been sanctions against Russia, and these are two really big exporters of things like gas and oil and wheat. And so right now we're just seeing a compounded issue from all the supply chain disruptions that we saw during COVID. So it's really not easy to say when inflation will go down, but the Federal Reserve is still going to stick with its plan to implement interest rate hikes this year. The first one is expected this month, but even with something like that, you're not going to really see the positive effects overnight. So consumers really should just know that inflation, unfortunately, is here to stay for now.
And to your point, what's happening in Ukraine is a devastating humanitarian crisis, and its ripple effects could inflame the financial burden that Americans have already been grappling with, notably their grocery bill. So explain to us in more detail how the war in Ukraine impacts food prices.
Yeah, so I will preface this by saying the USDA did say in a statement that they don't expect food prices to go up, but a lot of economists that I've spoken with, a lot of experts, they're not so optimistic. So Russia and Ukraine are some of the largest producers of wheat globally. And so now what we're seeing, we're going to get another global shock to the supply chain of wheat. And we're already seeing those trading prices soar. And so what we're going to see is a lot of these countries that were very reliant on this region for wheat, they're going to have to look elsewhere, including to the US, which does export a lot of wheat. But what we're going to see is an increased demand with a smaller inventory, and that's really where the squeeze is going to come from and how we're going to see the food prices increase.
And Kellyanne, do you have any tips on how to save on increased food costs? Because grocery bills coupled with the astronomical prices at the pump, people are going to have to making some critical decisions here.
I do. So the good news is there's a few strategies. You can go the route with using a cashback credit card. Some of these credit cards will offer as much as 6% in cashback for groceries. So if you're someone who can use credit responsibly, that can be a really great tool. And then if you don't have access to something like that, you should consider maybe trying out alternative food sources. Food waste is a huge issue in this country, and there are some services like Imperfect Foods that will sell a surplus of groceries from a certain grocery store or something at a huge discount. So you can look into something like that. And then I'll also add that it's really important to go to the grocery store with a plan. You should have a list with you. Grocery stores are actually designed to make us want to spend more. So you need to go in with a plan, know what you're going to buy, and stick to it. So another thing I'll say is if you get to the register and it's a little bit more than what you were expecting to spend, don't be afraid to put a few items back. I mean, every little bit counts. So those are just a few strategies.
All right, Kellyanne, we appreciate the insight as always. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq.